So in this video, what we want to do is really explain to you what a lift line is, what causes it, and how to get rid of it. And also, I think the most important part a lot of people don't talk about is preventing it actually. So this 2024 Model 3 is already protected and you have contamination here. It's been about an hour or two, a little bit longer than it should, and you want to get it out. Maybe it's a really big hair. It happens, okay? So when you lift it, so that's exactly what I'm going to do here, is I don't actually have contamination, but I'm just going to kind of make it look like I have it. So in this process, sometimes people use steam. It makes it a lot easier. We installed this a couple days ago, I think. So obviously it's been more than 1 or 2 hours, but let's say you did lift this area. And when you do this, you want to make sure you're hydrating. I'm going to make this a target right here in the middle, just so I can make it kind of aggressive in the way I'm doing it. And when you do this, you really want to make sure that you're doing it little by little and you have really clean hands, okay? And sometimes you have to ask the question, is it worth it, right? Because this might actually cause more issues than actually help. So lift line is exactly caused by what I just did. So I lifted that point. You created a line where you had to lift all the way up, which is all the way, and it created this weird little circle, right? So you'll sometimes see that. And here's the thing. Some film is going to do this more than others. Film that has a much higher adhesive, like aggressive adhesive, is going to do that more because when you have to lift it, because the adhesive is so aggressive, you tend to have to stretch it a lot more. This isn't, I don't think, the most extreme. This is Avery Dennison's film. I like it because it's kind of in that middle. So we can still do it without stretching it too much, okay? So that's kind of the reason why it happened. So first of all, before we actually get into fixing this, right? Look, if this happened to you, it happens, you're learning. But let's talk about prevention. I think the number one reason why people get lift line is because they have to lift it back up because they have to redo something. And the redo is usually caused by contamination, which can be in the form of like dirt, debris. So when you are working on, for example, like fenders, sometimes I even close the hood because this is not an engine, right? This is a frunk, but this carries a lot of dirt in that area. When you're doing these areas, the wheel well, we typically use a wheel cover. You could clean your tires in this area really well. It's still dirty. It's one of the dirtiest places. So that's another thing that will prevent some of that. The other thing is making sure that you have a really, really clean space. And then lastly, the other thing is like also using like proper tire. Like when I'm actually installing, I use like polyester, you know, collared shirts, so I look a little more professional. But also it doesn't carry a lot of hair. And then we also unfortunately ban dogs and pets in this space at least. Okay, those are all like smaller preventative, obvious ones. The other thing is how you put the film on matters a lot, right? So a lot of times when I'm doing pro installs in the shop, we do a lot of what we call reverse roll method. You can spray this down and then pretty much tack this and then just go all the way, which prevents any dust to creep in before. And then of course, before we even put the film, we do something called like a sweep. We spray the whole thing with slip solution, and then we get a squeegee, and then we pretty much go over the whole panel, right? And you could use like a larger squeegee if you have one, and just get all the water out. That's the last level of contamination. So now this has been sitting for a while. I'm just gonna push it down. Like I didn't put any additional slip. I'm gonna push it back down. And you can see, can you guys see that? There's just a very, very thin line. And this and the area that I just squeegee down is a slightly different. This is darker, this is lighter. The reason why is the adhesive hasn't settled. So if you see that in some areas that you're like, you just finished and you're like, hey, I get this, like some of these lines and discoloration between like each section, that's gonna be okay. Once it dries out, it's gonna even out, okay? So the tip for this, when you have to do this, okay, we already talked about the preventative, is first of all, douse it in slip solution. You have to go really, really heavy in that area. And if you can, try to go a little bit past it and really trying to make sure that all of that area is going to be. And then typically, remember how you squeegee it. So this one was we went down. So instead of going down, you're actually going to want to go the opposite direction. So instead of going this way, I'm just going to go side to side. And that typically helps a little bit in terms of, and I'm just focusing on the line area, right? After that, you can go down so that you can really make sure that you get all of those adhesive areas. So that's another tip. Can you see this? Yeah, it's very subtle. So if you want to do it, I would definitely do it within the 1-2 hour mark. You can do it afterwards, but again, it's a trade-off, right? Like, would you rather have a giant hair down the middle of your fender, or would you rather have a line that's visible in some angles? I would definitely choose the lift lines over the hair. Before you get into it, you don't want to ruin this whole piece of panel just for that. Just think about that before you start. So as this dries, it will get a little bit better, and over time, it will get slightly better. But if you have it, most likely it's not going to fully go away. Like some people would just like do it again if it's like too bad of a lift line. So that was like one example. Another example I want to mention is I want to peel this back up. Okay, obviously all the edges are also wrapped. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this case is on purpose, I'm going to just stretch it kind of aggressively, okay? On that line that I just did, okay? And I'm gonna get some, okay. I want to try to tack it. So just to kind of show you guys how much I stretched. It was aggressive, like I would not stretch it like that. But for demo purposes, I will. All right, so here we go. So when I did that, check this out. This is another reason sometimes, is that people stretch too much. So from that point of line, right, they stretched it too far across, and then that stretch point really happened right around here. And it's too much of a stretch where you are going to see a line and a little bit more, some people call it like working marks or love marks, because they're like trying to get it all down, and you're going to get a bunch of marks like that. So if you're going to stretch it, you know, you really want to stretch it across the whole thing. So whenever we try to teach, it's not really about stretching like the edge. Like I think it's a little bit different from PPF and vinyl, right? Color vinyl, like you could kind of do that, I guess, more in vinyl. But if I do that, let me go a little bit more even aggressive. Again, I'm kind of getting to a point of like extreme stretch, because now it's starting to really distort right about here. But hopefully you can see that I've already kind of messed this all up. But look at this. You guys see those lines? Those are going to be a lot harder for it to go away. Will it go away? No, it's not. It might lessen slightly, but those aren't going to go away. So the fix for this is don't stretch it like that. If you're going to stretch it, you got to stretch it across a larger panel. Those are more like stretch lines rather than lift marks, but in a way it was lift mark because I had to lift that and then stretch it. So it's kind of a combination of stretch line / lift line. So for those one, not fixable. This one, let's talk about this. It's getting, the coloration is coming back. It's getting closer and closer. But like I mentioned, there is still a line. It's subtle though. It's very subtle, and it's right here. So honestly, if it was like a giant hair, sometimes like the fix for that is like you really should see that, right? So one of the things that we do is like for every section that we do, we get a microfiber and we wipe it down, and then we inspect it in every angle, right? So when you see it, you'll see a hair. It's literally been 2 minutes. You can peel it back right away and then get that hair out, and then you don't have to worry about lift lines later down the line, right? So that's another measure that you really want to take instead of doing lift lines. I think at all costs, you want to avoid having to do that, but I wanted to show you if you had to, that's how I would do it. hopefully that was helpful in tackling lift lines, what it looks like, and what not to do. So if you have any questions, let us know in the comments below. Click on that subscribe button, and we'll have more tips for you in the future. See you later.